Broadcasting from the heart of Central Florida, you are listening to the most electrifying show in media today, A Neighbor's Choice Radio, and I am your host, David Gornoski. You are going to have a treat today because there are a lot of stories going on, but no one is providing you the actual truth of the matter if you listen to most of the mainstream media sources on radio and TV and internet today. I wanted to address the first news bit that I wanted to share with you all. I will be starting a new radio show, a live show on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the top news talk station, News Talk 102.5 FM in Orlando, one of the top major media markets for radio. I'll be starting that this Thursday, July 5th, Thursday, 8 o'clock, 102.5 FM, WFLA. You can listen anywhere around the world on the live stream for the show at 102.5 WFLA.iHeart.com. iHeart Media, of course, is the largest distributor of radio content, so it's great to have a powerhouse partner like that to develop this show on the broadcast airwaves. This will be in conjunction with the syndication that I already have for my written columns at Daily Caller and Town Hall and the American Conservative, WorldNet Daily, the Foundation for Economic Education. Another one that's a great partner is intellectualtakeout.org. They have a great audience on Facebook, and they're really good at putting out liberty ideas to the ether. And so that will be another piece of the puzzle. We're covering internet through all the different, about 15 different sites that pick up my columns. Then we're doing the Facebook stuff. So I've got the social media. I'm not really big into putting all my eggs in the basket of these giant social media companies because I don't think they know anything about freedom, and I'm not going to let them hijack my brand by being dependent on them. And so that's where we get to the third piece of the puzzle, which is my foray into broadcast radio. Radio is still the most listened to format in America, more listened to than TV. And so it's iHeartMedia, the company I'm partnering with in Orlando. They have a larger reach, weekly customers than Google does. And so there's a lot of room for opportunity here. You know, a lot of the people in talk radio, the hosts are in their 60s and 70s. So there's a market shift that's going to take place soon where people who show up into this space, which is still the most dominant media, more than TV and internet, for news information, people who show up when these older guys start to wind down their careers, we're going to be the ones to receive the harvest for showing up, because that's the key. You know, is you don't want to stay stuck on groupthink. Groupthink says, oh, they're going to have a blog. Remember when blogs were popular? Everybody talked about having a blog. Now you hardly ever hear about blogs as a big thing. Then there was Twitter and Periscope and Facebook, of course, and YouTube. And these are all great, powerful mediums, and I'm going to use them. But I'm not going to be dependent on some social media justice warrior who likes violence and wants to curate and use little algorithms to handicap the truth from being able to be shared properly on their medium. So instead of complaining about it, I'm just going to go get my own buttress to their censorship in the form of broadcast airwaves, and let's see how they try to censor that. They're not going to do it because we're going to bypass them, folks. And, you know, before long, Facebook will probably go the way of MySpace unless it changes its ways. So the market will take care of these bad actors. But I'm excited to have my first guest on this new radio show. The show is going to be called, just like everything else that I write and talk about, A Neighbor's Choice. Mercy or sacrifice. That's the choice that each neighbor has to make every day, politically, internally, in their own personal lives, and societally as well. But the first guest of my radio show this Thursday is going to be Dr. Ron Paul, the champion of liberty. We're going to reflect on the anniversary of the 4th of July. This will be the day after the 4th of July, so it'll be kind of like a hangover show where after you have all the fireworks and excitement, we're going to get to have a chance to reflect on the state of liberty 242 years after the Declaration of Independence was issued. Where do we stand? Where do we stand in liberty? Do we actually have liberty? Are we farther along than we think? Or, you know, it's a complicated story. And so we're going to get into that with Dr. Ron Paul as my first guest for my inaugural broadcast on the top Orlando major media market, 102.5 WFLA, this Thursday at 8 o'clock live. Someone posted something I wanted to get into. I noticed when I first announced that Ron Paul was going to be my guest, somebody made a comment identifying this story. I guess I didn't even know about it, but apparently one of his staffers on Facebook or whatever posted a link critiquing cultural Marxism. And I guess it was the link included some kind of image to some, you know, politically incorrect depictions of racial minorities, and you know, some insensitive, like old-fashioned looking cartoons that exaggerated the features and differences of racial minorities. And I saw how quick the media pushed this story and say, oh, remember Ron Paul? Yeah, well, remember, he's still a racist, I saw people say. And I thought to myself, how stupid, and what a perfect illustration of the whole theme of my show and my writing and everything. These people have the audacity to say that Ron Paul is some kind of person who is mean or hateful to racial minorities. I mean, these are so desperate. They're such haters. They're so full of envy. They're so silly. Because if you think about it, Ron Paul has been the champion of the minority interest. Anybody who defends the dignity of the person against the collective is the greatest champion of minorities, because there is no smaller minority than one against the collective, one person against a mob of angry voters or a mob of confused and petty and envious public that has the power of the state to inflict harm against individuals. So Ron Paul has always been a champion of the individual against the violence of collective mobs. And yet these little petty little weak state cultists in the major media wanted to make hay about this staffer posting a picture of, and I think the picture, of course it was crude. You shouldn't post that stuff. And the staffer took it down, and Ron Paul apologized for it and corrected the record. But this is so stupid and petty. You know, here's a guy who spent 2 campaigns explaining to people, and in other things before and after, explaining how he would pardon all nonviolent offenders day one if he was president. And yet, so these people who vote for Obama and Clinton, who keep black, brown, Asian, Jewish people locked in cages for nonviolent, victimless behaviors like drug laws, prostitution, raw milk, alternative medicine, economic regulations, all these laws that they put people and steal their money and threaten them with cages. Whatever color they are, they throw them in cages like animals. These people have the audacity to attack Ron Paul over some, you know, petty thing. And it just illustrates to me why it's so important to defend flesh and blood human beings from real violence. You see, the politically correct crowd, they are more obsessed with policing speech codes than they are from actually stopping real violence. That's why they voted for people like Obama and Clinton over people like Ron Paul. Because Ron Paul actually wanted to save flesh and blood victims of all colors from the belly of the prison system. Meanwhile, the people on the politically correct cult, they don't really care about flesh and blood victims. I've had leftist people tell me, stop talking about prison cages and assault and so forth so much. Don't talk about that. Why are you obsessed with talking about assault cages? Well, I don't know about you, but I don't understand. Can someone here explain to me why people are so obsessed with PC codes, like don't share an insensitive cartoon? Okay, I get that. Don't share an insensitive cartoon, but why is that more offensive than actual real physical violence? How come the left doesn't want to seriously address that? Everyone just half the left or whatever just voted for Hillary Clinton, and before that they voted for Obama. And those people kept millions of minorities locked in cages for victimless behaviors. Laws that shouldn't be on the books. And they have the audacity to lecture us the people of the liberty movement who have been defending the individual from the tyranny of the majority all along, these guys are fools. They are so obsessed with speech codes because it hides their conscience from being pricked by the violence that they are participating in when they vote for scoundrels like Obama and Clinton who do nothing to stop laws that attack innocent, non-violent people. Shame on the left and their obsession with covering up their own moral culpability for violence by using your joke speech codes. Your joke speech codes mean nothing. They do not hide your responsibility. When you hire Hillary Clinton and you know she calls people super predators, then you, sir or madam, are endorsing the perpetuation of violence against millions of black and brown and Jewish people. So you're going to go lecture Ron Paul because he had a cartoon. But you are the left is a walking cartoon. You are an embodiment of a cartoon. You preach all day long about how you care about victims, and you hired Hillary Clinton, who has murdered possibly millions of people in illegitimate wars. Are you kidding me? These people have no moral authority to be even speaking. But because they sell their soul for a dime, that's why they have all the media institutions in their little purchase. But that's okay. Those media institutions are dying. They don't even have a dime to save their soul. And so their only measure of success is being propped up by special interests who profit from war and bailouts and all kinds of other murderous schemes. Well, the game's up, my friends, because the real people who really care about nonviolence, we're coming out and we're calling your number out. You're not going to have a space to hide behind your little PC codes. Oh, someone posted a cartoon, so I can go vote for Hillary Clinton because she doesn't post cartoons that show ugly pictures, but she murders millions of Asians and Jews and black and brown people through the drug war. Wow, I'm such a great leftist. Wow, I am so enlightened. You know, I took all those classes in undergraduate class. I'm still in debt, $100,000. Please bail me out. You know, get out of here. No stupid degree can hide the moral responsibility you have when you hire people like the Clinton mafia crew and the Obama guys to keep laws on the books that put guns in minorities' faces. Why is flesh and blood violence passé to the PC crowd? It's because they don't understand how rooted they are in their worship of the state. They don't understand how much the state owns their mind. But I'm going to be sensitive to them. If I engage them personally, I try to be sensitive. I try to be caring to them. I try to, be gentle, but sometimes it's just enough because when I see these people, all these publications online mocking Congressman Ron Paul because one staffer put a stupid cartoon up and they're trying to pillory this man's reputation when he was the only one that had the guts to say pardon all nonviolent offenders. He literally would save the flesh and blood victims, thousands upon thousands of black and brown and Asian and Jewish and white and so forth people from the belly of our prison state for illegal, unconstitutional laws on the books. So who are they to tell us that this person is illegitimate or these racist terms they throw out? These people are trying to project their own racial issues onto other people because they're jealous, folks. Do you know when you sell your heart out for nothing, that's got to make you jealous when you see people who are actually morally pure, morally consistent, who actually walk the walk and talk the talk and actually think and actually have humility to say, we don't know how to run the world for you. We don't know how to run your life for you, as people in the liberty movement say. And yet the left, they're jealous of that. They're angry. They're fake imitators of nonviolence. They want to talk about nonviolence by saying, I don't use this word and I don't use this picture and I don't use these terms and I use this. It's just self-righteous garbage. They're just trying to hide their own moral responsibility for the violence that they perpetuate when they go along with big government. They don't want to wake up from the coercion that they are enabling every day. And somebody's going to call them out, and it's going to be, I guess, me, because the conservative movement, unfortunately, they're so stuck on, trying to legitimize their versions of state violence that they don't really have the consistent argument to really break through the fog of the PC cult that is in the state today. So I just saw that someone posted, and it's ridiculous. If you love liberty and you love the person, you are the greatest champion of all racial minorities and majorities around the world. Because collectivism is where violence is allowed to hide, and the state is a fan of keeping us all picking collectivist groups to hate each other and hide and turn into tribal conflict. They don't want us to wake out of that and respect the personhood of every person. Personhood is the most wicked vice you can ever talk about in state cultures. You see, personhood is anathema to statism. Personhood is the heart of the gospel. It's the heart of repentance and mercy and grace and love and forgiveness. It's the heart of civility, is to dignify the person and not to treat them as a piece of an animal or a cog in some collective battle. But the state doesn't want us that. They want us to fight each other. They want us to scream at each other about slogans like Black Lives Matter. No, all lives matter. Black Lives Matter. They want us to fight over that kind of stuff, because then as long as we're fighting each other, as long as you're blaming your neighbor for unjust laws, then the people who keep the laws on the books are never challenged directly. They're always able to just kind of throw smoke and mirrors, get you all ticked off at each other. And so we blame the average person on the street who themselves, they're being victimized as well. They're being victimized as well. And yet, so it's just a blaming game that never ends as long as we buy into the collectivist lie that politically correct statism has us to believe in. And so, that's the key issue. I want people to realize that the root of the state is rooted in cultic violence of ritual human sacrifice. That's the roots of the state. We go back tens of thousands of years. We go back to the early tribal origins of human culture and language and institutions. And what do we see? We see high priests serving as a kind of king function in society. And these high priests, they have a very special role. The high priest is to carry out the ritual sacrifice, the sacred violence, so to speak, the violence of killing one to preserve the national body. As the high priest Caiaphas said, it is better that one man die than the whole nation perish. And so in the ancient times, the high priest's job, as a friend of mine was reminding me the other day, he said, it's interesting to note that the high priest never could use vulgar language. The high priest could never say, I am going to kill this victim and stab him and tear him apart, right? Because if he did, it would awaken the community to not go along with the violence that was going on. If you use passion, if the priest was to use passion in the killing of the victim, the sacrifice, it would not take, so to speak, as a legitimate form of violence, because it would infect the community with the thought of, we're sticking it to them, and we're getting them, we're going to tear them apart, and that would create violence to escalate around the community. So the priests in the ancient world had to be very surgical, bureaucratic, very sterile almost, kind of like a dispassionate as he conducted the human sacrifice. And that was the means by which he could channel people's participation in a safe way, so they could say, okay, look, this is legitimate because he's not sounding like he's angry or bitter or personally vindictive as he kills this person. He's doing it in a mechanical fashion, right? And so that's why the left, they go nuts when they see politically incorrect cartoons or things that are offensive on a symbolic level, because there's those symbolic gestures, when they're crude, when they're ugly, they reveal like a mirror the violence at the heart of the state itself, and it breaks the sacredness of the state sacrificial mechanism. So when the left truly believes that as long as you use politically correct words, you can do whatever you want. You can go to wars. I mean, why every day the media is pounding the pavement, talking about going to war with Russia. Let's sanction them. Let's sanction them. How dare Trump? He's trying to go to make a meeting with Putin here in July, and the media is in a frenzy. They can't believe that he wants to have friendship with Russia. So they don't care about violence. They care about politically correct speech codes. That's why they'll make more attention about what Roseanne says on Twitter or what some teenager wears to prom if she wears an Asian dress. That is an abomination. That is violence writ large. That is an apocalyptic terror, right? But starving kids in Yemen, not an issue. Not an issue. They're okay with that because they're letting it happen. They don't say anything about it. They don't make any noise about it. Starving kids in Russia through sanctions, they don't care. They don't care. They shill for it every day. So they really, in their moral compass, there are tens of millions of people who's in their moral compass, it is more violent and ugly for a white girl to wear an Asian prom dress to the prom than it is for America to sanction and starve North Koreans, or sanction and starve Russians, or sanction and starve Yemenis, right? That they really, truly are more offended by markers of difference, like, what dress people can wear, or what words people can say, and how one is to address people from minority groups and so forth. They're more obsessed about that because it makes them feel good about themselves without actually having to repent for the violence that they're participating in and craving for every time they want the government to force people to be kind, to force people to, be charitable or sweet with their words, or fair with who they bake cakes for. They want to force people through violence, and it bothers them whenever they have an awareness of the vulgarity of the whole operation. And so they use these PC codes, these speech codes, to channel and shame other people to kind of mediate their own personal guilt for the kind of violence and vulgarity that they themselves are supporting every day. So until we understand the mechanism behind this ping pong game of blame games that the media is always constantly in, we're never going to really have a navigable map to make it through this silliness, right? Once you see the map from an anthropological standpoint, it becomes very simple, very predictable, and it allows you to kind of stop wasting your time fixated on it, and then to get to means of deconstructing it in a positive way. I told people the other day that, people ask me all the time, so what is it exactly that you do in your writing, in your radio show, in your podcasts and video interviews? And I tell people I'm a political exorcist. My job is to exercise the groupthink energies that possess people's minds. Because as long as they're stuck in groupthink, they're in a state of hypnosis in which they think words and cartoons on Twitter are worse than actual violence. They think they can hire politicians to commit coercion and state control over people's lives through the barrel of a gun. They think that's okay, as long as they use certain words and symbols to blame and shame other people who don't use those words. And we're just going to rip that veneer wide open. If there's one thing I accomplish in the next year or two, it's going to interject this concept into the stratosphere of media conversation, because it's not going to be allowed to be hidden. We're not going to just sit there and say, oh, I don't know why we're so obsessed with social justice PC codes. I want you to understand where it's coming from. I want you to understand it and dissect it so that you can master the mechanism that is that's fueling this desire to police words and gestures more than to stop violence. Because once you see the big picture of what's causing all this, it gives you a kind of sigh of relief, and it gives you an inspiration as to how to be positive in society in the midst of this silliness. So our job is to be political exorcists. We are to go to our neighbors and to exorcise the demons of violence and aggression that they have because of their tribal loyalties, to just pull that demonic energy out of their heads, those groupthink, collective, hypnotic, resonant frequencies of thought that they're picking up like trash around the TV and around the internet. They're getting sucked into the orbit of bad thinking that pollutes people's joy and mercy and their normal moral sense of right and wrong. And we're going to kindly pull them out of it and set them back into their right mind, and to set them into their personhood, their dignity as individuals, so that they can love their neighbor as they should be loved themselves. And so that's the problem with people in the PC cult. They don't love themselves. They're angry, bitter, nasty people. And so they want to shame you. They want to make you lose your job. They want to make you feel hurt. They want you to feel ugly and dirty because they feel ugly. They feel dirty. They feel like a joke. They feel like a walking cartoon. They have problems with racial minority stereotypes, and they want to shame you for that. They want to dump their negative bowl of energy onto your back and to have these scapegoats that they can vilify so that they can feel better about themselves. But we're going to show people that there's a better way, that if you respect the personhood of every person, you don't have to be stuck in these tribal games of blaming other people for speech codes. So I look forward to the show on Thursday at 8 o'clock with my first guest, Dr. Ron Paul, former presidential candidate and the star of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. RonPaulLibertyReport.com is where you can find his show. It's live every day, noon Eastern time. He does a live show on video on YouTube, and I look forward to speaking with him, looking back at the Declaration of Independence and then looking forward as to what the future is in store for the liberty movement. I think the liberty movement is alive and well. I think the cultural forces of loving the individual and loving the personhood of every person and not using aggression to get our way over them, I think that's more ascendant than ever in many ways. Culturally, look at what the issue was with the cages on the border. There's an example of, you play the audio clips of children who are being separated by from their parents by the government, right? And so that, if that makes, now of course the people who were using it, they were just using it for cheap points to attack their rival, their mimetic double in Donald Trump. But it still had an effect on the majority of the people, in a sense that people were kind of upset by hearing that crying. It affected them. So we need to think about that as an example of how to use the stories of victims to help people see the injustices of the drug war, that there are children crying and screaming for mommy and daddy because of the drug war every day in America, and nobody gives them a voice. Nobody gives them primetime television because it's not expedient for political points. And so we need to give those voices a platform. And that's what I'm going to do on A Neighbor's Choice, on the radio show, in my articles. I'm going to give the voices of people who have been bullied with real violence, not just bad, meany words like the left. All they care about is words. They don't care about sticks and stones, breaking bones. They care about mean words. So we're going to deal with people who are caught in real violence, and I'm going to put them on the show, and you're going to be able to interact with real voices of laws that are unjust, that are destroying families, that are breaking people's banks, that are putting them in the violent cages with violent sociopaths where they have no means of self-defense. We're going to give them a voice, because that's the responsibility of people who love personhood. People who love personhood want to treat their neighbor as they want to be treated. They don't want to hide behind PC codes. They want to just get things done. They want to bring families back together. They want to unify families who are torn apart because of unjust, tyrannical laws. Okay? So we're going to have prostitutes on A Neighbor's Choice. We're going to have drug dealers on A Neighbor's Choice, people who have spent time in jail for drug dealing. We're going to have people who have sold raw milk. We're going to put Amish farmers who've been imprisoned for raw milk. They squeezed milk from a cow's udder. They put it in a container and they sold it to somebody. And the left in the nanny state, they think it's okay to put you in a cage. And the right does too. But at least the right is willing to actually self-evaluate. The left is just stuck on very stupid ideas of war and totalitarian nanny state government. And so we're gonna challenge the false concern for victims that the left culture tries to instill in society, and we're going to offer the real, authentic version they're trying to imitate, which is the Christian personhood revolution, where we give a voice to the victims of real violence. And when you see the contrast between the jokes on TV who care about how many people were nominated for Oscars, with each race, or what percentage of the engineering departments in America are male or female. That's all they care about. They care about very symbolic markers of difference. So the left's biggest concern right now is stuff like, how do we get like 60% of engineering graduates to be female? That's their biggest concern. They don't care how many females are in prison for food license laws, for drugs, for consensual sex work, for alternative medicine. They don't care about how many women are in prison for victimless crimes. I mean, you'll get somebody that's into that, but by and large, as a cultural force, the left is fixated on stupid stuff like how many women are getting engineering degrees or mathematics degrees. That's all they care about. They don't care about the flesh and blood of women crying, saying, hey, you know what? I didn't agree with this regulation. I practiced civil disobedience. They tore my family apart. They fined us. They destroyed our lives. They took our house because we couldn't pay for all their egregious fees. And they threw us in a cage with violent people and treated us like an animal. That's happening every day. And the left doesn't tell you about that because they love to worship the state. The state is their God. And so they cannot wake up from that. Well, we're going to let them wake up. We're going to help them wake them up. We're going to exercise the groupthink out of their minds, and we're going to bring them, just as everybody else deserves to be, fully endowed with their dignified personhood, back in the driver's seat of their minds, not groupthink, not blame games, not moral obfuscation. Okay? So I started the show by talking about Ron Paul and how they were attacking Ron Paul for his staffer posting a crude photo of racial minorities in a cartoon. He took it down and dealt with it, and then the media used it as an opportunity to call him very racist and all this stuff. And I thought to myself, how dare these fools, these bumbling fools, have the audacity to hire Hillary Clinton, who has locked up millions of minorities without even thinking or batting an eye, and has bombed millions of minorities overseas, or let's say brown and Asian people overseas, and white people, all kinds of people overseas, black people. She's bombed the heck out of all kinds of countries. She destroyed Libya. She was instrumental in pushing the war for Iraq. She has been an enabler of all kinds of mass atrocity on women and minorities. And they don't care, because what they care about is scoring cheap political points on people that they're jealous of. And they're jealous of people who are happy. They're jealous of people who are filled with joy. They're jealous of people who are confident in the truth. And they're jealous of people that don't need to scapegoat people to make themselves feel better. But that's what we're dealing with every day when we look at the media stories. I saw a story today about how the New York Times, they seem kind of glee, it looks like, at the top story. One of the top stories of the New York Times is how excited they are for the leftist that's been elected in Mexico, you know, and so they don't talk about how, you know, leftism and socialism has starved people. They don't talk about that. They just talk about it with this kind of glee, like, oh wow, this is a radical restructuring of their society. Well, I don't think statism is a radical restructuring of any society. I think Mexico has been long victimized by a heavy-handed state that is enthralled with very violent, powerful interests that don't care about personhood, and so there's no break of the status quo with this. There's no respect for personhood in this election. Neither is there in many of most of the elections we have here in America, and so, but it doesn't matter, because for the left, this is a religion, and it is for the right too. The right has their own form of state worship, and it's obvious when you see the flag worship and stuff like that. But we have to really focus on what matters here, and what matters is the flesh and blood victims that are in the belly of our prison system, and the flesh and blood victims that are attacked by drones and sanctions across the globe. They never get their voices heard on Rachel Maddow's show. They'll never get their voices heard on the front pages of the New York Times. They'll always be relegated to silence unless we ourselves do the hard work to give them a platform to let their voices be heard. So if you know of people who have been victimized by a law against victimless behavior, then let me know, and I will put them on the show, and I'll give them a platform to let them tell their story about how they nonviolently tolerated injustice done to them for a victimless behavior. So whether it's a suspended license or violating some economic regulation or collecting rainwater in their backyard with the EPA or all the other classic nonviolent laws that people know about, let me know their name, let me know their contact information, put us in touch, and we will gladly feature them on the radio show. We'll gladly feature them on the YouTube channel and in the syndicated column that I put out to the top conservative and alternative media outlets in America, because that's the most important thing we can do. The left is really good at telling stories. They're really good at giving an empathic voice to people who are marginalized. But what they do is they take that story and they usually turn it as a cheap point to attack their rivals to get more state power. With a neighbor's choice, we're not interested in getting state power. We just want to say, just say no. Just say no to the power of groupthink, because it's not really powerful. It's just an illusion. Just say no to the need to have a state run your life from cradle to grave. Just say no to the need to put your neighbor in an assault cage to make yourself feel like you're better than them. Just say no. Get over that high, because it's not going to give you the high you think it's going to give you anymore, because the personhood revolution started by Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago is continuing. It's continuing to deconstruct these binding institutions of sacrifice that the state has used for thousands of years, and it's continuing to make us lose our appetite the more we're exposed through the use of media technology to the voices of victims who we should not touch their body. We should not find them. We should not mess with their families. We should leave them alone. And we're going to give that voice. We're going to give a voice. So this is a kind of a year of jubilee for a lot of people who have never had the chance to have their voices told. I want you to do your best to get in touch with people who have been victimized by some kind of regulation or law. Let me know who they are, and we're going to give them a platform to let their story be told, because the power of a victim's voice is all that it takes to start to slowly, not even slowly sometimes, but fast, to rapidly break down the lying moral groupthink of sacrifice that the state depends on for their perpetual gains of power. So if we want to end tyranny, we cannot approach the state with more or smaller doses of tyranny. We have to approach the state through culture, through telling the stories of wrongfully persecuted individuals who have been treated brutally with vulgar acts of bureaucratic violence, through fines, through family separation, through other acts of coercion, including being put into the belly of a prison system that treats people like animals. It treats people like animals. And I have friends who have worked in the prison system, and they tell me all about it. And it is violent and even worse than you could possibly imagine in many cases. And it's a shame that we sit in society as bystanders, giant groups of bystanders, just sitting there and putting up with this kind of antiquated, old-fashioned, outdated, not gonna work method of dealing with order. We only use force against actual violence, folks. If you've stolen something, if you've defrauded someone, if you've tried to assault someone, that's the only case to use force. Because when you use force against violence in that way, it's not a form of mere violence. Because if someone tries to assault someone, you don't go and assault them and beat them after you've subdued them. That's mirroring the violence. But if you just restrain them physically and put them in a timeout spot, like a jail, right? That is a form of not mirroring the violence, but using a form of force to protect real victims. That's the force that we're allowed to use morally and ethically as persons imitating Jesus. But we do not have any right to initiate violence to say, give me your money, or I'm putting you in a kidnap cage. Or we don't have that right to use that kind of coercion against people because of some kind of nonviolent, victimless behavior that they are engaging in that we don't like. Because when we do that, first of all, it's not going to provide the peace that you think it's going to provide. It's just going to create more mere violence in the community. And second of all, it's not going to provide the shame shifting that you hope it will provide. Because that's what the bottom line is for so many of these politically correct campaigns are about. It's about shaming other people to hopefully mitigate the shame that you internally are racked by. So a lot of people are just caught in a prison of shame every day for insensitivities they feel or things that they've done wrong. And they use politics as a giant ritual to kind of atone for their own personal shame. And that's the function of politics. It's like one giant fantasy game that people play in order to kind of feel good about themselves, to hurt somebody else through a group and feel good at watching that other person be treated as a monster. And that's what they want you to get stuck on doing every day. But there are things that you can do yourself that you can make the world better without engaging in any of the shame shifting of politics. There are things that need to be done in energy. There are things that need to be done in medicine. There are things that need to be done in the world of food and food safety and all kinds of other technologies and things that need to be developed. And they aren't going to be done by violent edicts and central planning and one-size-fits-all handouts. They're going to be done through creative, non-violent institutions called companies with skin in their game, skin in the game, their own risk in the game, putting their own heart, their reputation, their lives on the line to make sure that they can shift culture forward to a better, more peaceful, more prosperous place. So there's all kinds of things that are really what people want. We don't really want, at the end of the day, to stay stuck on these primitive games of blame games that politics wants to draw us back into. That's not our natural order. Our natural order is to thrive in imitation of creative powers that the universe was made by. We are meant to be creators. We're meant to be self-giving creators. We are not meant to be blame game weaklings that just hide behind groups and throw stones along with millions of other voters and tell, oh, I'm going to go vote against Trump because he's not. How stupid is that? You know, how stupid can you possibly really subjugate your heart to think that Trump is an unprecedented evil just because he uses foul language? Meanwhile, he's doing the same thing that the other candidates like Obama and Hillary were doing. I mean, this is the kind of culty, kind of hypnotic group thing that people are stuck on. And the only way we're going to be able to move them forward is by saying, look, who's going to be the first one to throw the stone? Who's going to be the first one without the group hiding you to carry out the violence against Trump supporters? You know, they always want to say, that's why Maxine Waters said, when you see someone in the likes Trump, go get a group and go scream and yell at him. Notice that the group is what's important. Because people don't use violence and aggression typically as much as an individual. They like to hide in groups, like a herd. And then in that group energy, they get energy collectively. It's like a possession. I mean that word literally. It's like a possession of energy that says, oh, now that we've got a group, we're whipped up into a frenzy. I see your aggression. It feeds my aggression. And before you know it, we're in a really frenzy, a large frenzy of aggressive energy. And we're going to go dump that energy onto the back of someone who can't fight back because they're outnumbered. Well, folks, that's what Maxine Waters was trying to tell people to do. Not that she's any worse than the other politicians. She's just revealing the natural state of all democratic orders. The majority has the right to subjugate and oppress and stick their foot on the back of the necks of the people who don't have the highest numbers on their side. This is a stupid, outdated game. We got to grow up from it. And we're going to grow up from it as long as we follow the personhood revolution that Jesus Christ started 2,000 years ago. And it's up to us as individuals to be his body on earth, to imitate that ethic of nonviolence and non-aggression so that we don't perpetuate the same old, that we leave our world better than it was when we came into it. That's the goal. Everybody wants that. And the only way we can do that is to grow up from this stupidity that hides the violence that people do when they're in groups. You know, I'm saying here on Drudge Report, top headline, man arrested for threatening to chop Rand Paul and family with an axe. I mean, the left, they think that saying bad language or saying, you know, or a white girl wearing an Asian prom dress is worse than families threatening are people threatening. Now, of course, they won't say that, but that's what they're doing because they make a big, giant deal about how racist and evil people are for saying wrong words, but then they kind of snicker and laugh. I remember how many mainstream journalists were laughing and mocking when Rand Paul was injured by that sick, deranged neighbor who tackled him and injured him when he was riding his lawnmower. I mean, this is insane. They laugh at that. That's like, ooh, that's fun to be violent and nasty because it's my enemy, and enemy others need to be sacrificed. Yay, that's what they're basically revealing. It's sick and disgusting. It's just demonic possession by groupthink. And meanwhile, they don't care the fact that Rand Paul is the biggest offender, not Obama. Obama was a joke. Obama kept people detained. Obama kept the wars going. He allowed Muslims to be bombed. He allowed Christians to be destroyed in the Middle East. He allowed people to be looted. He allowed families to be separated by the millions for all kinds of nonviolent acts in our system. He allowed all that to go on. And they cheered and enabled him every step of the way. All these Twitter people that scream in our ears every day about how they're so just, they didn't do anything to stop the injustices of Obama and Clinton. They voted for that stuff. And that's the number one problem we're facing today, is this kind of blithe, antiquated, outdated, authoritarian impulse that thinks that you can legitimize using violence against peaceful people just because you want your way. That's over. That is over. We're not going back to those ways. We have evolved because of the personhood revolution. We have respect for the person. We have fair trials, and we're going to move forward with that. We're not going back. We're not going back the way the leftists and the victimists want, that they want to ritually sacrifice people using coercion. They want to laugh at people like Rand Paul for being attacked. And meanwhile, they don't care at all about stopping the wars he's trying to stop. I'm tired of this mess, and I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and let these fools try to dominate the airwaves of what's available for thinking. I'm going to present the real message that everyone needs to get around, which is nonviolence, mercy, not sacrifice. Mercy, not putting people in a cage who you disagree with. Mercy, not drone striking. Mercy, not sanctioning. Let me explain something about the Russia thing, because I've seen a lot of people every day on the media, it's all they ever talk about is Russia. If you were afraid of Putin and you're concerned that Putin is a corrupt leader who could be a dangerous person for his people or whatever, right? If you really believe that, the best thing you could do to dismantle his power would be to open up free trade and travel with Russia. Because the more free trade and travel we have with Russia, the less opportunity the Russian people have to become unified around Putin. See, when we're traveling and trading and we don't have tariffs and sanctions, when we have easier access to travel back and forth, people get along. They realize that peace works, that nonviolence works, that mercy, not sacrifice, is much more enjoyable. And when they get a taste of that freedom and the beauty of prosperity that comes with that freedom, they have a less appetite to go to war or to hate another country. That's groupthink possession. And the state and its media allies want us locked in that groupthink possession. They want us to think that the only way we can deal with Putin is to starve poor, innocent Russian families with sanctions. They want to believe in sacrifice. But Christians have no place for sacrifice. Christians only have the place for mercy and forbearance and meekness, not sacrifice. The way of the state, the way of the world is sacrifice. But we who are Christians, we who want to imitate Jesus, regardless of your religious beliefs, if you want to follow or imitate the role model of Jesus, we just have no place for that kind of foolish thinking. So the best way, Jesus has developed a way of dealing with violence and evil, which is to not mirror it. So if it's true that Putin is a very dangerous threat to America, that he wants to actively take us or hurt us, right? If that's true, then the way you would deal with that is you would have a president say, let's trade and travel with the people of Russia. No barriers. When you do that, now the incentive to scapegoat America is lost on the public of Russia. Because before Obama's government started engineering the coup in Western Ukraine to create violence and mass atrocity in Ukraine, the Russian public was very against Putin. He was very unpopular. But once they saw foreign powers meddling and messing on the border of their country, and then they sanctioned the Russian people and starved their families, Well, when you can read the headlines and see that America and the Western powers are sanctioning and starving your family, you have no option but to go back into the arms of the dictator that you didn't like previously, because at least he's rallying, hey, we're going to make it. We're the hometown. We can do it. We're going to produce ourselves out of this mess, right? We're not going to let these people bully us. So if you love Putin and you want to keep him in power, then keep doing what the American media wants you to do, which is to hate them and to sanction Russia, because all you're doing is enabling Putin. So if you're a Putin enabler, that means you're Rachel Maddow, you're CNN. Those are the biggest enablers of Putin you could ask for, because they are the ones that gin up all the public support for Putin by crippling the freedom of everyday ordinary Russians who naturally have a love for other people and naturally want to get along with Americans, but they're forced to go back into the hands of Putin once we initiate aggression by starving their families through sanctions, where they can't access financial markets, they can't access goods and trades as easily with the Western world. Well, that's just an act of war, folks. That's an act of scapegoating writ large, and it's an act that every Christian should be rejecting with their voice and with their action and with their heart every day, loud and vocally. We have no place for this kind of anti-Christ behavior where we use violence to sacrifice. It's better. See, what did Caiaphas say, folks? Caiaphas said, it's better that one man die than the whole nation perish. And that's the logic. That's the illogic behind the media's obsession with sanctioning and starving Russians. They want Trump to do more. They are saying it's better that the Russian poor families starve and financially get destroyed so that our nation does not perish if we don't treat them as a scapegoat. See, look how stupid their logic is. It doesn't even hold up, but just repeating it. No, sanctions keep Putin in power. If you want to get him reformed, if you want him to reform his ways and become more peaceful and less corrupt, or if you want him to go, then the number one thing that Jesus has equipped us with is the technique of turning the other cheek. Turning the other cheek is not a passive stance. It's a Aikido move that dismantles violence by allowing it to fall on its own weight. And so if we were worried about the threat of Putin, someone who actually imitates Jesus' turning of the cheek move would open up trade and travel and say, we're going to be friends with you guys. We love you guys. Here's the travel. Let's go. Here's the trade. Let's go. Here's the market commerce opportunities. Let's go. Let's be friends. And by doing that, Putin has no ability to engender popular support back into his league, and he has no ability to scapegoat American people as the enemy. So that's how you stop mirroring sacrificial violence. That's how you start imitating Jesus when it comes to Russia. I just showed you, using one of Jesus's axiomatic principles, how to dismantle the evil of dangerous foreign leaders. I just showed you how to do it, turning the other cheek. That's a way that you proactively dismantle violent, evil groups by not mirroring their failed attempts at violence and domination, but by allowing them to fall on their own weight. Because if Putin was really trying to aggress against us, then when we respond by saying, oh, okay, well, you're trying to be aggressive. Well, here, look, we just removed all barriers to trade with the people of Russia. And we just removed the fees and so forth for travel visas, made it a lot easier. How can the Russian people scandalize that? It's going to force Putin to either reform his ways, if you don't think he's being nice, or somebody else is going to take that reign of power, because the Russian public is not going to want to mess up a good thing going if they have a good interconnected financial relationship and travel relationship with the American public or the Western people. Do you see how simple it is? Jesus gives us the full principles we need to have a peaceful and prosperous society, to solve foreign policy issues, to solve domestic issues, and to solve personal issues in our own lives. It's all there. There's no mystery behind it. So I appreciate you listening, and I look forward to seeing you guys. I'm going to try to do a Facebook Live while I'm doing my first broadcast at 102.5 WFLA in Orlando, Florida, this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with my special guest, champion of liberty, Dr. Ron Paul, the founder of the Liberty Movement. And so I look forward to seeing you there.